You could make your way back to the state line. I know we've all packed these sessions in really tight, but we do have some folks waiting on Zoom, getting ready to hear from us on these two wonderful lunchtime presentations. So if you could take a minute, pause your conversation, and take a little walk back to the buffet, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
My time, so I don't write. The speakers in the back. I'll go talk to them. Colorado question. Okay. We're 15 minutes behind. But I work because you have that break. Really? So I'm just gonna. I really am. Yeah, I'm a beautiful. Yep. Yes, but no, I think that
Oh, really? Figure out what we're going to do for yeah, it's nice. We would have never had this.
like proved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they have to be short too. It works, so it doesn't- Oh, no, they're saying
Hello, everybody. If everyone can find their seats, we'll get started with the next speaker. All right, well, I'll get started. I'm Jean McDonald. I'm the president and CEO of Fairview Range in Hibbing and also Grand Itasca Clinic and Hospital here in Grand Rapids. And as one of the many sponsors of this event, we're just really excited to be here. We did some strategic planning recently between our two organizations, and the #1 priority item that came forward was, of course, workforce development, recruitment, and retention. And we're just really excited to participate in this event and have already enjoyed the morning speakers. So I decided I'm not going to talk too much about the current state of healthcare because frankly, I just don't want to depress everyone. But I will say that, you know, on a positive note, just to reflect on what we heard this morning, we did see some surprising movement in hiring of physicians through the pandemic. And a lot of that had to do with physicians looking from the metro, wanting to move to rural communities. And between our two hospitals, we hired 15 physicians over the last 18 months. And most of it has to do with the rural focus. So that is exciting. You know, we're balancing that out with some of the other things that we've heard today, which are, you know, our staff, our support staff and non-clinical staff being able to live in this great place and work in the metro. So our competition is a little bit different. Obviously through the pandemic, everybody's learned how to work remote, and I think that's been great. We've sent some folks home too, but we're now competing with places in the metro areas that we never competed with before. So we're learning a lot, and it's changed our whole workforce and retention strategy. Our current first-year turnover for non-clinical staff is right around 50%. And we have about 200 open positions between our two organizations. So it is alarming. You know, you throw in a pandemic with no end in sight, and then you start to get into the depressing stuff. But I just wanted to take a second to talk a little bit about how what we're talking about here today does affect us in the healthcare community. And again, we're excited to be here. I wanted to take a second to introduce the next speaker, Jennifer Cady, who is from Minnesota Power. And Jennifer has an impressive bio. I know you've all seen it in your packets. So Jennifer is currently the manager of regulatory strategy and policy, and I'll let you hear from her. So I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jean. I want to start with letting you all know that if you have really tough questions, you can direct them to my former boss and elite CEO, Al Hodnick, who's sitting right up there. He'll take all the hard ones. Just kidding. Thank you so much for having me here today. As we think about kind of healthy communities and what that looks like, I know you're covering a number of topics during these 2 days. Housing, healthcare, and I'm really thrilled that there's some time on the agenda to talk about energy, as it really is the essential service that powers our life, provides comfort, security, quality of life to everything that we do. So I am very grateful for this agenda time and to be able to share some information about what Minnesota Power is up to. So I know some of you in this room are almost energy experts and have worked with Minnesota Power quite extensively in the past, and to others, we might be fairly new, and this story will be hopefully interesting and new to you. What I plan to cover is a brief overview of who Minnesota Power is, what we do. I'll also talk about our integrated resource plan, which is essentially our long-term vision for the next 15 years of supplying our customers' energy needs. I'll talk about what we've got in store and how the Boswell Energy Center here in Cohasset fits into that overall picture. Please feel free to interrupt me as we go if you have questions, comments, or we have time at the end as well. So we'll start with Minnesota Power. We have been serving this region for over a century. We are one of the most long-standing presence in the business community in northern Minnesota. And I like to joke that we were 100% renewable before it was even a thing, before it was cool. We had our start providing power to the city of Duluth through the power of the St. Louis River. So harnessing hydropower to electrify Duluth was how we got our start, and then grew to support the Iron Range, northern Minnesota, central Minnesota as our economy grew. We are one of the most unique utilities in the entire country for a number of reasons. We're headquartered in Duluth, Minnesota, but as you can see on this map, we serve northeastern to central Minnesota, 26,000 square miles, a lot of rural territory to cover. Within those 26,000 square miles, we serve 145,000 customers, which is a fairly small number of customers compared to other utilities in our industry. However, we're unique in our size. So almost 3/4 of our energy sales go to large industrial customers, which will make sense to you as we're all a part of this natural resources-based economy. But even within our industrial sector, we're even further concentrated with 67% of our sales going to mining and forestry industries specifically. So we power the mines on our Iron Range and we power the paper mills throughout this part of the state. We also provide wholesale power service to 15 municipalities across northern Minnesota. I want to spend a moment just on a little bit more about our unique customer mix, which should resonate a lot because it reflects our unique regional economy that we have here in northern Minnesota. If you have further questions on this, I will tell you to contact Kelsey because she'll have better information than I do. But 85% of all domestic iron has its start right here on Minnesota's Iron Range. And because of the energy Minnesota Power provides that industry, it's the cleanest steel in the world, coming right here from our neighborhood. It's also a huge powerhouse of our regional economy, along with our paper customers. We also recognize that these customers are price sensitive, they're competing in a global marketplace, and they're energy intensive. So the energy we provide to them must be affordable for them to continue to be competitive in their respective marketplaces. This uniqueness provides an incredible amount of benefit for all Minnesota Power customers. And this chart might be a little bit too engineering for you, especially if you're in the way back. But what I want to demonstrate is the amount of energy used by those large industrial customers compared to the amount of energy our residential homes take. So the top line in blue is what we provide to those industrial customers. The bottom line in orange is what energy goes to power our homes. This is important because utilities are built very similarly to highway systems, right? They're built to support the peak, which could be Christmas Eve when all of our lights are on and it's dark and it's cold and everyone's using energy, similar to how highways are built to support rush hour traffic. However, these customers are unique in that they use energy 24/7. Their operations are going steadily, which means they're utilizing the system at a more efficient rate. So essentially, our customers are getting more of what they paid for from the system, and it keeps rates low for everyone. For many decades, Minnesota Power has had the lowest residential rates in the state of Minnesota, and it's largely due to this presence of industry in our regional economy. So we have this unique customer mix that helps us keep rates low. At the same time, Minnesota Power has been on a journey that we call our Energy Forward Resource Strategy. I mentioned that we were 100% renewable in the early 1900s. By 2005, a century later, we were 95% coal. And our initial hydro that spurred our company was only 5% of our portfolio. And that was, over time, as the Iron Range developed and manufacturing developed, coal power was used to support all of those industries. But in 2005, we recognized that we were too concentrated on one fuel source. So we started on our energy forward strategy to diversify that portfolio. We met Minnesota's renewable energy standard of having 25% of your energy be renewable a decade early in 2015. By 2019, Minnesota Power was 30% renewable due to the additions primarily of wind energy in North Dakota. And I'm so proud to say that by the end of 2020, Minnesota Power became the first utility in the state of Minnesota and the second in the entire Midwest to offer energy to customers that was 50% renewable, far surpassing the state's renewable energy standard while keeping rates affordable. But it's not just about adding renewable energy to your portfolio, it's also ensuring that all of the assets on your system are as clean as they can be. And Minnesota Power worked diligently to reduce emissions on all of its facilities. We've reduced our mercury emissions 90% since 2016, reducing carbon 50% across the board, and reducing emissions overall 70%. That means that our remaining units, primarily Boswell Energy Center units 3 and 4, are among the cleanest operating plants in the nation. So this is a quick snapshot of our generation supply. Obviously, you know, the Boswell Energy Center is here in Cohasset, and the analogy I like best is that if our energy system is a home, Boswell is our load-bearing wall, truly the backbone of our system. However, we are importing quite a bit of wind energy from North Dakota. If you've ever driven across North Dakota, you know why it's such a wind resource-rich part of the country. We've also have a number of other assets in our mix and are continuing to add hydro, solar, and new natural gas facilities to ensure reliability as we move to a cleaner energy system. So that was just a quick high-level snapshot of who Minnesota Power is and how we serve our customers today. What I'd like to spend some time on next is Minnesota's integrated resource planning process. So this is something that not every state in the country has. Minnesota has one of the most sophisticated requirements for investor-owned utilities, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. So an integrated resource plan is considered one of the most important planning tools for the state to essentially chart out the next 15 years of customer energy needs and determine the least cost way of serving those energy needs. Each electric utility in the state has to file one of these plans every few years, and they go through an intensive public process where stakeholders can weigh in. They can challenge the utility's assumptions, they can provide alternative plans, and at the end of the day, the Public Utilities Commission approves or modifies or rejects those plans that then set the course for the utility for the next several years. By statute, the Minnesota legislature has chartered IRPs to ensure customer needs are met in a least cost manner. However, Minnesota does have a number of renewable preferences in our state statutes. So renewable energy gets preference over others. There are modeling considerations that help effectuate that. If you're super in the weeds, they're called externalities or the social cost of carbon. And it allows the state to put preference on what resources they want to see come through in a plan. So the specific requirements for Minnesota Power, we file IRPs every couple of years. That's not a new process to us. What is new is that the commission told us in this IRP that we needed to also do a baseload retirement study and look at a future retirement for Boswell Energy Center units 3, 4, both together and individually. The commission challenged us and said, we want to see what it looks like if those units retire early. So in addition to the IRP, we needed to do a baseload retirement study and also file a securitization plan. And if there are any financial whizzes in the room, you can get with them on the next break. But essentially, it's looking at whether securitization could be a financial tool to help pay the costs of this transition. So we were ordered to look into that as well and file all of these things on February 1st, 2021, which we have done. Now, the integrated resource planning process is a complex process, and it starts with your outlook for your customer energy needs. And as we all know, being a part of this natural resource economy, that can be a wide range of futures. So our forecasters that look at customer industries and markets and where is the economy going will forecast out several different scenarios, kind of a high energy need scenario, the economy is doing great, customers are operating at full production. And then they'll look at a low energy scenario. What if we're in a recession, and we've all been through several of those in our lifetimes here in our region. And then try to find what we think is the most accurate load forecast going forward. And then we go down and take a look at what energy is needed to meet that need. We look at our current assets, whether we need to add new ones or modernize or change the way we operate what we currently have to really meet our customers' needs at the best price. As we do that, there are a number of things that we're balancing in this planning process. The first is that we know that customers, above all, expect safety, reliability, and affordability. It is not acceptable for the lights to not turn on when you need them, especially when we set the record of the lowest temperature during the polar vortex at like 56 degrees below zero. So there is no tolerance for the power to not be there when it's needed. We also know that customers expect power and essential service to be affordable. It's something that they need to power their daily lives, and it needs to be offered at an acceptable rate. We also know that we need to balance sustainability. Minnesota Power is committed to environmental stewardship and doing the right thing for our communities and our planet. So we holistically look at all of this, all of these considerations with the customer at the center, because that's ultimately who we're here to serve. So our current IRP timeline, you may be surprised to learn that regulation moves slowly in Minnesota. We filed this IRP on February 1st, 2021. And like I mentioned, the Public Utilities Commission goes through an open public process, takes comment on our plan. That comment period has been delayed now 4 times. I think we're on our 4th or 5th extension. But initial comments on the plan are due November 30th. Reply comments will be due in January, and we expect a hearing in 2020. So I've included some information here, but any member of the public is welcome to write a letter, send an email. They even have a fax number if you want to weigh in and be heard on what you think about Minnesota Power's plan. So that's a little bit about kind of what the IRP process is. Again, not every state in the country has that, just a handful, and Minnesota has one of the most robust IRP processes of any state. So now I'd like to talk about our first of its kind stakeholder engagement process that we used before we filed this IRP. It's something that I'm personally really proud of. And there are several members in the audience today that were participants from beginning to end. So Kelsey Johnson, Tamara, there's probably more that I can't see, but they'll be able to give you the off the record version of what they thought the stakeholder process was like. We started this stakeholder process for a very specific reason. Minnesota Power serves the Northland, but policy decisions are made in St. Paul. And we knew that this IRP was consequential not only to our company, but to our region. And we wanted to make sure that the voices of our customers were heard in St. Paul. That being said, everyone in this room has a day job, and it doesn't involve driving down to St. Paul and sitting in the Public Utilities Commission hearings every Thursday or writing 100-page briefs on what you think about energy. That said, your input is critical in this process. And so we've intentionally designed a process to formally gather the feedback, the priorities, and the input from people who live and work right here, this region that we serve. So we engaged a number of different categories of people, local development representatives, economic development representatives, environmental activists, consumer advocates, customer representatives, and more. And I don't know if they knew what they committed to at the beginning, but I'll show you what they ended up doing. So we had an incredibly intensive process. as you can imagine, charting the next 15 years of our energy needs, especially during this transformative time, is a heavy undertaking. It's not really like a light lunch meeting kind of topic. And we started with regional meetings around our service territory. Grand Rapids, Duluth, Chisholm, we went all over to meet with people where they were and to hear what was important to them in terms of what their energy priorities were. But more importantly, we wanted to hear and receive that input for Minnesota Power for us to develop our plan, but we also really wanted advocates to hear each other. So we wanted the folks that are based in St. Paul, live in St. Paul, and advocate at the PUC every day to hear from the people that live here and are directly affected by change. And that's something that I'm really proud of, getting these groups together to hear each other and recognize different points of view. Of course, we were surprised by the COVID pandemic, like everyone in this room, and we pivoted our great plan to remote meetings through the COVID pandemic. And that had its challenges, but it also had some benefits in connecting people geographically that maybe wouldn't have traveled to Grand Rapids or St. Paul for a meeting or vice versa. So this stakeholder process took the better part of a year, and there's a pretty thick stakeholder report that summarizes the outcomes, but I'm incredibly proud that we were able to capture a number of diverse perspectives in the lead up to developing our next plan. We also spent time as a stakeholder group really talking about energy policy trends in the state of Minnesota. So Minnesota has one of the most well-developed book of statutes related to energy policy of any other state in the country besides potentially California and New York and Hawaii. So we have a number of regulations that Minnesota Power has to meet and a number of statutory goals we have to work towards. Of course, there's a renewable energy standard. There's also carbon reduction goals, energy efficiency and conservation standards. We also have legislation on the books that says that rates should be affordable. And we have a specific statute for our industries here in northern Minnesota that our energy intensive, trade exposed customers should have competitive rates. So we're trying to balance all of this, the policy currently on the books, while keeping an eye on where the state of Minnesota is going, which is Governor Walz's vision of 100% clean energy by 2050, which we now share. So what was the result of all that work? 12 months of meetings, hours and hours together, recognizing that that was not people's full-time job. They donated their time and their talent and their insights, and we are incredibly grateful. But what we developed together is a first of its kind issue map. So this might not look like much to you, but it's the first time that anyone has put together basically a yardstick to measure different IRP scenarios against. What it does is we identified 4 key categories of considerations. Minnesota Power specifically elevated customers and communities to the same level of importance as the climate. When we talk about sustainability, it's not just environmental sustainability. We truly believe that our customers need to be healthy, our communities need to be vibrant, and of course, we need to protect the environment, but true sustainability considers all of those things. So the stakeholder group captured in an issue map all of the things that they think regulators should consider when they look at our long-term energy plans. There's a category for the environment, of course. This includes things like carbon emissions, impacts directly to the land, to the water, to the air, but also things like environmental justice. Other categories included customers. What is the rate that customers are going to pay? How affordable is this energy plan for the future? Both for residential customers, for low-income customers, and for our industry, which again is highly competitive. We also looked at what it meant for the grid. Can the grid support this energy plan? Can we maintain reliable service? Can we maintain the status of the service that we enjoy today? And then we looked at community. So there was a incredible number of people that donated their time and talent to this process that really drove home the importance of community in any future energy plan. And a couple of those examples are what does tax space look like in this scenario. What are the job impacts? What are the impacts to our industry that support our communities? And what are the impacts directly to our communities with these different scenarios that we are tasked to consider? Within each of these pie slices, there are specific metrics that the group developed by which you can measure different plans. So I just pulled out the community impacts one and recognize that there are metrics in each slice of this issue map. But the stakeholder group determined that a IRP scenario that would be the worst case for the community would be one in which population declines, taxes increase beyond our capacity to pay, schools and other amenities close, and poverty increases. So that's something none of us would want. If someone proposed a scenario and said, this should be your plan for the next 15 years, but these were the impacts, we would say, no thanks. The best case scenario from the community perspective would be a future energy plan that encouraged population growth, that kept the social fabric of the community strong, that the community was healthy and vibrant, and the median income goes up. So this is really critical work because it provides our regulator with something very specific to measure different proposals against. Instead of just kind of hyperbole or saying that's a good plan or that's a terrible plan, now we have specific metrics by which we can say, we think this is the best plan going forward. So what is our plan? You're probably all waiting to hear. The very first thing we did, that Minnesota Power did upon kind of hearing all of the incredible feedback from our stakeholder group is, like I mentioned, we determined sustainability is holistic, and we need to, in order for the energy transition to be successful, our customers and our communities need to be healthy as well. So we identified 4 musts for any carbon reduction plan. The first is that we need to ensure reliability. Again, it's kind of the meat and potatoes of our industry. That's what we all expect Minnesota Power to do, is to keep the lights on. So that has to be a part of the plan. The second is we need to manage costs for all customers. None of us can afford runaway utility bills, and cost matters, not just to everyday people, but to the businesses and industries that power our region. Third, we need time for a just transition for the employees and communities that would be affected by any change in our generation fleet. Now, Minnesota Power has been through this. We've closed or idled or remissioned coal plants over the years, and we recognize what an impactful change that is. And so we will not advocate for any plan that doesn't allow time for transition. And finally, we need to allow time for technology to develop and advance. If we try to go too fast, we'll be bound by the technology that's available to us today. And we know there are really exciting things on the horizon, a lot of funding into research and development, exciting things happening in hydrogen and energy storage. And we need time for those technologies to not only develop, but to become more economic for our customers. So our plan that we filed with the Public Utilities Commission earlier this year takes us from 50% renewable energy, where Minnesota Power is today, to our next goal of 70% renewable by 2030. The time frame of our IRP is 2021 to 2035. That's the 15-year horizon. And by 2035, our plan reduces carbon 80%. We've also agreed to cease coal operations across our fleet by 2035. Working towards our vision of a carbon-free future by 2050. So I think that's impressive. I'm obviously biased, but how are we going to do it, right? That's the question. How do you get there? Well, a couple of key concrete steps will allow Minnesota Power to achieve the goals I just outlined. First, we will add a significant number of new renewable energy assets to our system, primarily wind and solar. So this plan proposes 400 megawatts of new wind and solar in the next decade. We will achieve our coal-free commitment by first changing the operations at Boswell Energy Center Unit 3. So Boswell 3 has already this year changed to economic dispatch, meaning it's just operating in our regional market a little bit differently than it has. We're proposing to retire Boswell Energy Center Unit 3 in 2030 and cease coal operations at Boswell Energy Center Unit 4 in 2035. However, there are a bunch of other things we need to do for the grid of the future beyond just generation. We need to continue to strengthen the electric grid. I think we all experience and kind of have firsthand stories of more and more extreme weather that we're seeing, whether it be polar vortex in the winter or summer heat waves in the summertime. We need a grid that's not only reliable, but resilient, one that can come back up when it's knocked out by Mother Nature. We need to adopt innovative solutions as new technology comes to the market and becomes economic for our customers. And we need to engage with stakeholders. So energy is something that we often take for granted, but affects all of us. And so we feel, Minnesota Power feels, it's incredibly important as we chart this next phase of our energy journey that we do so with partners, and specifically partners that are immediately impacted by the decisions that are made. And of course, we will work with the state of Minnesota, who regulates us, to identify a just and sustainable plan for our communities. So the last part of my presentation here, I want to talk a little bit specifically about Boswell Energy Center, since again, it's the load-bearing wall of our system. We also had to file, or were ordered to file, a baseload retirement study. But hopefully everyone in this room has a broad understanding of how important Boswell Energy Center is, not just to Minnesota Power and our customers, but to the community. So Boswell is almost 1,000 megawatts of power right here in Cohasset. We have invested hundreds of millions of dollars into these units over the last decade to make them among the cleanest in the nation. And so that investment directly corresponds with those carbon and mercury reduction numbers that I talked about earlier. We've already retired 2 of the 4 units. So Boswell units 1 and 2 retired in 2018, and Boswell continues to be kind of the workhorse of our fleet here in Cohasset. Boswell also has an incredible economic impact to the city of Cohasset, Itasca County, and the broader region. There's quite a few numbers on this screen in terms of what we pay in property taxes and payroll taxes and school district contributions. But what I want to highlight, because we know those numbers, economic development professionals know them probably forward and backward. But the thing that often gets missed on these economic impact snapshots is that social fabric idea, right? So our employees at Boswell Energy Center are a part of your community. They donate their time, their talent, their treasure to the communities in which they live. They are your kids' soccer coaches and on your nonprofit boards of directors and active in the community in a way that's hard to put a value on if they weren't here. So Boswell Energy Center for the future, what do we think? I talked about early retirement at Boswell 3. I talked about ceasing coal operations at Boswell Energy Center Unit 4. What I want to assure this room today is that Boswell Energy Center is an incredibly valuable part of our energy system and will be even more valuable in the future if you can believe that, primarily for its infrastructure. So as the grid broadly transitions to a cleaner energy future, interconnection points on the grid are increasingly valuable. So the interconnection at Boswell, the infrastructure that's already in place and supports energy production, has significant value and will have even more value in the future. The infrastructure I'm talking about are things like electrical, water, heating infrastructure, access to natural gas, pipeline, rail access, and of course the transmission assets around there. So significant new transmission is needed for any changes at Boswell 4 in the future, in addition to a replacement of that resource. So we feel like there is a long-term future for the Boswell site, and it has an incredible value on the Minnesota Power system that will continue to be needed into the future. So what I want to conclude with today is Minnesota Power has a bold vision of how we're going to get to a carbon-free future. But we have, I think, a unique view of sustainability, which is not just about the climate, but also about the health of our customers and communities. And together, we need to move to that sustainable future. Our commitment is that we will continue to listen to stakeholders. We will continue to evolve our plans for the future based on that feedback. And we've done a lot of that so far. I hope that if you ask any of the participants of our stakeholder process, I hope they would tell you that they felt not only heard, but that their input was taken into the plan that we presented to the PUC. We have served this region for 100 years, and we hope to serve it for another 100 years. We're embedded in the community, and we hope to present a long-term energy plan that reflects and supports the health of our region more broadly. So that's kind of the conclusion of my slides. I am happy to take any questions about Minnesota Power, integrated resource planning, the future. Does anyone have any questions for me? Yes.
Jeff, question for you. State of Minnesota has kind of said, all right, you guys need to close, gave you a certain time date. The one slide back there, it shows about a $10 million deficit that Itasca County will see, be it property tax, school, fiscal disparities. I mean, you name it, it's going to affect everything. Has the state of Minnesota explained how that shortcoming is how they're gonna backfill us here in Itasca County or surrounding areas? But they said how that, that's 20% of our property tax.
Yeah, absolutely.
So how, and thank you for paying that much. I appreciate it. But us other taxpayers, now the household taxpayers, are going to have to make up that shortfall unless the state has some great idea. Have they shared that with you at all?
So currently there's no legislation that helps account for that change. Minnesota Power certainly recognizes how important that is. And so we include what we call a socioeconomic analysis to our regulators. And we provide all of that and we say, you can look at the cost of a generation asset, but you can't look at it without looking at the impact to the community, which is why we're trying so hard to elevate this idea of healthy communities as part of the energy transition. There's a number of, I think, proposals floating around. The Midwest Governors Association has a kind of a just transition group looking at this that I think Tamara's an important part of. There's a number of nonprofits kind of working in this space, but there's no specific state action on that right as of yet. I do know that DEED has created a department that I think will be standing up to look at host community transition. But other than that, I don't know of anything else.
A follow-up question?
Yes, of course.
About a month ago, my understanding is sun wasn't shining, wind wasn't blowing, and Manitoba's in a drought just like we are. We ain't got nothing spinning. So tell me, what kind of fix do we have there? I don't want to be in California where we just shut off the switch.
Yeah, well, we have actually a really unique fix that other utilities don't have, and it's inherent in our large industrial customers. So our large customers, Kelsey's shaking her head. I don't know what she's going to say. But what we have the ability to do is we've partnered with our largest customers, the mines and the paper mills, and they have agreed to be called on when we need their energy. So if we're in a situation where other assets can't provide what we need, we're able to call US Steel or Cleveland Cliffs and have them back down their operations so we can redirect that power to the grid. It's called demand response. We've tried to expand that program, but it's a really unique capability that Minnesota Power has that other utilities don't have. And because of the size, it's significant. And if we ask them to back down their operations, we can redirect the energy back to the grid. So that's one thing one tool that Minnesota Power has in those emergency situations that helps us a lot.
All right, I was just gonna ask, Is Minnesota Power looking at ways to retool Boswell into potentially some other alternative? I know you've got like a 15-year window, but can you talk a little bit about some of the other alternatives that may be out there that you're looking at? Or is it not?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Like I said, we've determined the Boswell site is incredibly valuable and critical to the system. We are investigating all sorts of options for future use, whether that be refueling. Obviously, natural gas is an opportunity, but we're really interested to see where hydrogen goes in the next few years, as hydrogen is carbon free. So we're looking at all kinds of different refueling opportunities for that. But hopefully we don't have to do that anytime soon. Hopefully that's outside the 15-year window.
That transition time for the employees that are currently working there.
Yeah, so I don't know, Paul is out here somewhere and he could talk. Do you want to talk about that? Or I can answer it, but I don't want to speak for you.
No, thank you for your question. Our employees are something that we care deeply about, of course. And as Jennifer mentioned, we've transitioned to other coal facilities, and I'll talk a little bit specifically about the transition of the units 1 and 2 at Boswell. When the commission made their order, we knew what the plan was in terms of how long we had to operate those units, and it wasn't long. So we met with our employees a couple of years in advance. We explained to them the process. We explained to them the outcome of this decision, and then from there we started working with them on what the headcount reductions at Boswell would look like. We started working with them on other landing spots within our organization and development opportunities so they can further develop themselves if they want to stay in the area, but maybe not land with Minnesota Power. So we were all way in front of that with our employees. During that transition, which was towards the end of 2018, we eliminated 57 positions because of the shutdown of units 1 and 2, but we only had 10 people later. So, and it's still a lot, but it's not 57. It's because of our culture. Not because of our employees. Right. No, I mean, we're still transitioning a lot of employees. In fact, I have a request to hire 4 people right now. Following this request, will be another request to hire probably 7 more. So we need to keep the facility staffed in order to run safely and reliably. But we know that once the commission rules on our proposed plan, that's going to determine the timeline for Unit 3 and Unit 4 is still somewhat up in the air in terms of what it's going to look like post 2035. But we'll be all the time out with that place, so they're very aware of what those transition timelines are. So, but between now and 2030, we're anticipating a lot of retirements. And like I said, we need people to run the facility, so we've been actually doing quite a bit of hiring since COVID is somewhat limited.
Are there any other questions for me? Otherwise, I'm getting the hook up here. Okay, so I want to end on a good note. Well, not that that wasn't a good note, but Minnesota Power is dedicated to the economic development of this region. And so a good transition to follow me is Irp Timeline that I'm introducing, leads Minnesota Power's economic development team that does a lot of work in partnership with you all to try to grow businesses and opportunities for our region. So Eric, welcome.
Thank you, Jennifer. Fantastic job. All right, everybody stand up. You just ate lunch. Shake it out a little bit. I'm going to introduce our next speakers here. So if Tim and Mark want to come forward, we'll get you guys ready to go here. As Jennifer mentioned, my name is Irp Timeline. I have the honor and privilege of leading our economic development and community relations team here at Minnesota Power. Jennifer did an amazing job. No surprise, she's a Ranger, as most of us are. She's from Hibbing. Al Hodnick and I are from Aurora. Paul Underland likes to say he's from Aurora, but he's from Palo. And Jody Picarsi is our native in the room here. So we got a good group of leaders here from Minnesota Power, and really honored to be part of this effort. I just want to give kudos to Tamara and the team at IEDC for bringing everybody together. Earlier this morning, our keynote speaker made reference to Doc Brown from Back to the Future. And before I was on our economic development team, I was an HR guy that helped support the Boswell Center. And I was in a staff meeting one day, and there was some project going on that was an efficiency project that was gonna squeeze a couple, I think it was a couple more megawatts out of the turbine. And I remember the engineer I was sitting next to started doing some calculations on the back of an envelope, and he said, it's gonna be dang near 1.21 gigawatts coming out of this thing. So who knows what 1.21 gigawatts is? Just shout it out. The flux capacitor, so that is the amount of power required to put the DeLorean into space travel, time travel. So with that theme, I'm gonna take you back in the Wayback Machine 1 year to almost to the day, the year 2020, which was when I was just sitting at my computer, reading my emails, looking at what was coming down the pike, and we got this notice that there was some project that was looking for a location, and we get millions of these things, and usually they don't go anywhere in the economic development world, but this one caught my eye because of the scope and scale of it. And so almost a year to the day, we had two consultants with Southern accents fly to Grand Rapids, and we walked them through the region. Actually, I think it was Hibbing that time. If you ever want to like have a secret inside track to figuring out what's happening in the economic development world, you should check airport registers for local airports, because when fancy jets fly into town, it's usually a tip-off. But anyway, a couple of months later, we found out the name of that company. They were very secretive at the time. We knew it as Project Frontier. We didn't know anything about the industry. We didn't know anything about the company. And when I say we, I mean this was a joint team effort. So Janelle Greshner at the IRRB, I see Matt Schoberg there, Tamara, our friends at Apex, our friends at Itasca County, the city of Cohasset, Deed, we got some legislators here as well, and many other folks all played a role in helping get us to this point where I can introduce our next speakers. So you've probably heard about Huber Engineered Woods and the project that they're looking at constructing on Minnesota Power land that we are in the process of transacting to them. I'm pretty excited to welcome them here. I don't want to steal their thunder, so I'll just introduce both Tim and Mark here. So Tim Romans is the Vice President of R&D and Innovation for Huber Engineered Woods. He has 25 years of wood products manufacturing, technical, supply chain, and operational experience. He joined Huber in 2002 and held positions in operational quality and plant management before overseeing their R&D and innovation area. Tim is originally from Iowa and a graduate of Iowa State University, so not much of a Hawkeyes fan, I'm guessing. He lives in Georgia with his wife and 3 sons. And then Mark Lindquist, who is a local, I'll let him touch on that, has served as the Vice President of Operations for Huber Engineered Woods since 2010. And he's responsible for their environmental health and safety, sustainability, manufacturing, and engineering areas. He has also served on the Huber Engineered Woods leadership team and has worked his way up from a press area manager all the way up to his current role as Vice President of Operations. Mark has more than 35 years of progressive experience in the forest products and chemical industries, and I'm excited to welcome them both up here to talk about their exciting project in Cohasset. So please welcome Mark and Tim.
Try to talk and not make the mics make a bunch of noise at the same time. So we're honored to be here. We're excited to be here. Hopefully the stereo is not too bad here. All right, I'll try to get over here maybe. We're going to just kind of review who Huber is, not just Huber Engineered Woods, but the J.M. Huber Corporation in general. So the J.M. Huber Corporation is a global company. So we have 40 locations in over 20 different countries. So fairly diverse in terms of what we do, but we're pretty focused on North America, Asia, and Europe. The J.M. Huber Corporation is a portfolio company. We are a privately held company, which gives us some unique objectives. But we also have some of the best practices of your typical public companies like a corporate board. Each one of these portfolio management companies is its own company in itself, and each one of those has their own board of directors. So I said earlier, it is a family-owned company. The family is still involved with the operation. Founded in 1883, we're on our 6th generation of family ownership. There's 230 Huber family members that are involved in the family. So, and every summer they get together. They call it their Huber Palooza, and they go to different facilities. And it is quite the event. So you can imagine 220 family members running around, and the lucky facility that they choose gets to talk to all the family members. Ironically, only 3 Huber family members are involved in the businesses. So 4,000 employees and about $2.2 billion in annual sales. Not a huge company, but a good medium-sized business. So talk a little bit about the portfolio businesses. The CP Kelco, they're primarily responsible for responsibly sourced food additives. So we talked a little bit about the breakfast sandwich at Starbucks today, the coffee in Starbucks. CP Kelco makes components that go into food grade materials. Silk milk, the dispersants in Tide laundry detergent, the hand gels you get that have the little spheres in them. CP Kelco makes all those components that allow those materials to be dispersed evenly. Huber Engineered Materials, they are the largest manufacturer of non-halogenated fire retardants in the world. So we have aluminum trihydrates that go into fire retardant insulations. All the fire retardant sheathing on wiring is made by Huber Engineered Materials. And in North America, we are the largest manufacturer of ground precipitated calcium carbonate. We have mines in Georgia, in Texas, and in Quincy, Illinois. Huber Resources Corporation. So this is really how Huber got involved in the environment. At one point in time, Huber was one of the largest private landowners in Maine and in New England. And over the years, they've divested most of that timberland, but they still really have an affinity for managing timber. So Huber Resource Corporation basically manages timber for conservation organizations, for private industrial landowners, and we have management throughout North America. They actually fall within Huber Engineered Woods, which we'll talk about here in just a moment when we talk about the project. But one of the things about Huber being a privately owned company is in 2014, IMD Lombard did an evaluation of the best managed privately owned business in the world. And J.M. Huber Corporation won that award. There's only been 2 companies in North America ever win that award, J.M. Huber Corporation and SC Johnson. So pretty good company. Deloitte recently performed their best managed businesses in North America. And on the inaugural survey, J.M. Huber was one of 27 companies nominated as best privately held company management-wise in North America. We won it again this year. More importantly, the connectivity that Huber has with the community is very important. At each one of our facilities, they are named the employer of choice and the best business to work for in each one of their communities. So we're all proud of that. The family is extremely proud of that. And you can see that in their vision. Jennifer talked a little bit about sustainability. We have an ESG strategy, environmental social governance, that is very impactful. We just got done with a global summit, 350 people talking just about DE&I, environmental responsibility, and commitment to the community. So it's important to the family. By the way, I'm sure we'll be able to get back on track by the time we're done talking here. So Huber Engineered Woods. So OSB industry is part and parcel to this community. Right? We all know Blandon back in the day, one of the very first OSB facilities ever. So Huber Engineered Woods got involved in OSB in 1983 at a sugar beet plant in Easton, Maine. So we didn't build our first plant as a greenfield. We actually converted a sugar beet plant to make OSB. We make about 3 billion square feet of product annually. So that puts us right in the middle of the pack in terms of OSB manufacturers. Strategically, we're located pretty well throughout the East. So we have the plant in Easton, Maine. In 1988, we built a plant in Commerce, Georgia. In 1994, we built a plant in Crystalville, Virginia, quickly followed by Spring City, Tennessee. And our latest plant was in Broken Bow, Oklahoma. So you see Minnesota fits very nicely with the geography of where we have. We do service with our products the entire North America, all of North America, but it's very hard to service the West when you're focused on the East. Does anybody know where the majority of new home starts is? Yeah, the Southwest, California, Texas. Well, we don't have a whole lot of stuff right there. Our Broken Bow facility services everything west of the Mississippi. One plant servicing the entire west of the country is pretty difficult. So this plant will fit nicely for us there. So we focus on not just OSB, but one of the things that Huber has done is they've taken OSB, I don't want to say just to the next level, but we've created new categories when it comes to wood products. In 1997, the product Advantech was created. Anybody know what Advantech is? That's good. You're all going to know a whole lot about it in the next couple of years, I promise. So Advantech is a subfloor product, right? Typically, when you build with plywood or you build with commodity OSB. What Advantech did is it took the stiffness and strength associated with plywood, and it gave you the dimensional stability and the consistency of OSB, and it married them together. It's been the #1 brand quality product for 23 straight years. When we do some of our industry research and when we do our assessments on brand quality and recognition in the building products, it ranks #1. It beats Pella Windows, it beats Anderson Doors, it beats Chick-fil-A. So it in terms of brand recognition to buildings, it is #1. The second innovation that Huber has developed is the zip system. So, as a matter of fact, driving up in Elk River, I saw 2 big multifamily jobs being built with Advantech and with the zip system. So the zip system took your conventional house wrap, you build a home, you put up your sheething, and you wrap it with a house wrap, and it integrated that into one step. Both for the roof and the wall. So on the roof, integrated your felt paper for your shingles with your substrate. And it really speeds up the path to entry for the homeowner. The last product on the bottom right is Exicor. That is a non-combustible product. So when you think about all the fires out west, all the codes that are coming to fruition with WUI, which is Wildlife Urban Interface, all those code changes drive behavior and habits on the innovation side. Luckily, Huber is very involved in innovation, and that continues to allow us to provide solutions for the builders, which ultimately impacts all of us as homeowners. Huber is a member of the Housing Innovation Alliance. We have a relationship with the Department of Energy looking for affordable housing. We actually have a project going on right now with the University of Minnesota. It's called the Monopath Project, where we're looking at different innovative ways to expedite not just the design of affordable housing, but path to market, right? You can get a lot of energy focused on innovation, on how to make something new. But at the end of the day, what's important is how do you get it to the end state? How do you get it from ideation to commercialization? So we can come up with a bunch of cool ways to build homes, but we got to get them on a foundation. So that's what the Monopath project is all about. We're going to show a quick video, just talk a little bit about Huber Engineered Woods Innovation Campus. And then I'll turn it over to Mark and he can talk about the project rotation.
Everybody, I'm Tate from Huber Engineered Woods, coming at you today from what may look like just a regular construction job site. But this is actually the part of our expansive research and development campus at our operational facility in Commerce, Georgia. Today, we're going to be going behind the scenes with our R&D and innovation teams to tour the campus, including the new state-of-the-art innovation lab, to see how we gain a competitive edge, fuel our category-disrupting ideas, and redefine the building materials industry. So follow along as we put our products to the ultimate test, so that when they arrive on job sites all across North America, they exceed builders' expectations. I'm here with Tim Romans, Vice President of Research and Development Innovation at Huber Engineered Woods. Tim, thanks for having us in this incredible facility to walk us through what
Innovation is Huber Engineered Woods DNA. Since we developed Advantech, right, we created not just new products, we created new categories.
How does the expansion of this campus increase our capabilities?
Well, first, it allows us to rapidly grow. And that's very important for us. We just continue to defend and differentiate not just our current brands, but the new brands that we have. And what it allows us to do is as we develop new categories, we have to create new standards, new specifications. So it allows us to do that internally. And it really speeds up our path to market.
You know, during 2020, when a lot of our open innovation partners weren't able to get into the lab and to generate data the way that we used to be able to rely on them to do so, we've been able to bring that in-house. Shear wall testing, for example, you know, you have to send that up to Wisconsin or the West Coast to get those things tested. Now we can build a wall and rack it in a day and learn.
Well, it's given us more capability. The company has invested a lot of money in modern equipment and give us that capability, which allows us to look at new materials, allows us to troubleshoot things in our process, allows us to look at our raw materials and determine how much consistency there is, improve our quality of the product. So it has in a lot of ways improved our capability.
We do outdoor testing, so that's the environment of Georgia here. We try to look at some outdoor testing. We've got some outdoor testing in Eastern Maine. With our weatherization chamber, we're able to mimic a climate in the cold of Boston in the wintertime. We can mimic something like Portland, Oregon during the rainy season. Likewise, we can look at Houston, Texas during the hot humid summer. The combination of both the lab results and the outdoor real world testing gives us a good indication that our products are going to perform with the standard that our builders and customers can trust and expect.
And that must really lead to rapid prototyping of existing products, new products.
Absolutely. It enables us to monitor and develop and evaluate products quicker than we would just put them all out in the field.
You know, as our sales team has grown over the last 5 or 6 years, more people on the road, you get more requests, more returns, more asks of, hey, does this work here? Does this sealant work with that? There are finished floor adhesives that work with your products here. So I think it's just allowed us a lot more freedom, you know, to evaluate our product performance and compatibility.
How does chemistry play into the rest of the innovation efforts that we have?
Well, there's a lot of things that we do, not just what we do in the room, we also support all the groups. Because there's always need for coatings and the additives and different chemicals. And even in our processes, sometimes we want to troubleshoot things that are going on in the process that are chemically related. They have to improve the quality of our product. So it touches a lot of different aspects of it.
Jason, what do you like most about your job in innovation at Huber Engineered Woods?
Within the innovation group, I get to come in every day and try to create the future of Huber Engineered Woods. I get to discover new technologies, explore new startups and companies, and just constantly look to see around corners and to determine what's the next great thing that's going to set Huber Engineered Woods up for the next 150 years.
I got to ask you, what's next?
Well, Dave, that's the $1 million question. We get asked that every day. Unfortunately, can't tell you. Can't tell me or meant to. Well, it's a little bit of both. Can't tell you from the sense that we have 20 products, over 20 products in the pipeline. And what exactly will come out next is anyone's guess. But I can say that we work on products that are tied to our brand, they're tied to our portfolio.
So Michael, we couldn't help but notice all of the solar panels across this entire research and development campus here in Commerce. How do those solar panels play into the environmental health and safety and sustainability initiatives? I think we should do this.
EHS and sustainability is one of our guiding principles. And, we have a sustainability strategy. One of the goals of that is to reduce our energy footprint. Renewables is one way to do that. Solar is a renewable form of energy, supplies 20% of our energy at the Innovation Center. And we've been able to try it over the last 12 months or so. We track real-time data. We can see when it's on, we can see how many kilowatts we're supplying, and we're able to track that on a daily basis and prove that the system meets the design criteria. EHS, we're involved pretty closely with innovation. We get in early on projects. We're able to identify safety benefits, issues, environmental concerns. Just drive that alignment and tell the story between what we're trying to do to improve and meet customer goals, and also drive sustainability in our company. Also, we can help our plants too. As we put projects into a plant, we can make sure it's executed safely and resolve environmental compliance concerns.
I love the collaboration we have, not only with a very diverse skill set of folks on our innovation team, but the interaction we have with our sales force, folks like you, our operations people, and then even collaborating with our open innovation partners, just folks that are passionate about bringing new products to market and improving our products.
You need innovation, differentiated woods. It doesn't end on this campus. Right? We talk about the people in marketing, people in communications, our strategic builders, our insights council, our strategic partners that we deal with when we provide solutions on our accessories. All those things have to work together in order for us to continue to provide new products and solutions. And at the end of the day, that's what's differentiated us to this point. We hope to continue to do that as we go forward.
So I want to give a huge thank you to the entire research, development, and innovation team for giving us this exclusive behind-the-scenes look of their expansive innovation campus here in Commerce, Georgia. It's astounding to see how the capabilities of our assets here give us a competitive advantage and fuel our category-disrupting products to ensure that we have world-class performance that Huber Engineered Woods has been and always will be known for. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you next time.
I'm Mark Lindquist. I'm the Vice President of Operations. A little bit about myself. I grew up in northern Minnesota from town Airport, my International Falls, so this is kind of home to me a little bit. I graduated from the University of Minnesota. Actually, Dr. Boyer, some of you sat in this earlier session here, he was my advisor at the university, so it's kind of a small world. Oh, sorry. Can you hear me okay now? Probably a little bit better, sorry. I've been married for 35 years. Got one daughter. She just got married about 3 weeks ago. Great outing for us and all that kind of stuff. So now I'm pretty well set with regards. I got a big pay raise and all that kind of stuff. So it's really good to be here. I guess a couple of things here. I'm kind of the way I challenge my guys and challenge myself is, about change. We talked about that earlier today and how important that is. And, I look at every day I go to work and I think every year I go home and say, I got to do my job different. Otherwise I'm not doing it right. And that's kind of how I challenge our plant managers, not that you're doing everything wrong, but you got to change and be willing to do things different. Think outside the box, because that's how you get better and better. So kind of insightful for the presentation today. I think Burl asked a question about Minnesota Power and how important it is to the economy to have manufacturing and people employed. I mean, a big company like Minnesota Power provides a lot of tax money there. Obviously, Huber's in the same light. We operate in 5 different plants around North America here, and we pay hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxes on that. So we feel involved with the community, and hopefully we'll be able to participate with some of that and make it good for the economy up here. So Tim said that we're gonna be getting on track. He knows I'm a man of a few words, so I will get us on track and just talk a little bit about the site that we have here. Why Minnesota? You know, obviously, back in the early 80s, I started here in Grand Rapids at the old Blended Wood Products plant. So that's kind of where I got my start with everything in terms of working in OSB. I loved it. And I always wanted to come back to it. I've been back to it for a long time. I took a little assignment overseas, building a couple plants and stuff like that, in the chemical side, the paper side, but for the most part, OSB has been my heart and soul for, you know, dang near 40 years now. So why Minnesota? Obviously, here we've got, strategically, we've got a specialty product. As Tim alluded to, we're pretty predominant in the southeast, in the northeast, but we really don't have a presence in the Midwest, nor Pacific Northwest, or the Southwest. So our intention is to put the plant here in Minnesota, Cohasset, that will be able to service our specialty strategy, whether it's zip or the flooring product here in this region, Midwest and Pacific Northwest, and that broken bow kind of focus on the southeast or southwest side of the country here. The other thing here with Minnesota, I just know the workforce. You know, it's great people, good work ethics, smart, dedicated people. So, and then, you know, obviously, you know, we've spent a better part of 3 to 5 years studying the wood baskets around North America before we landed on this site here in northern Minnesota. So if there's no wood, you can't build an OSB plant, you can't run it, right? You know, and obviously a fireman doesn't go to fire without water. You know, you can't build an OSB plant without wood. So that's really paramount and important. Got a sustainable forest here, good management and things like that. So obviously that's why we chose the Cohasset site here. We also have good infrastructure. You know, I-2 or interstate or Highway 2 is going east to west, and not too far from I-35 to get south into those regions. So infrastructure wise, it's a good location here. And then obviously, this is going to be our biggest investment as far as capital in 138 years of business here. So it's extremely important that we have a good, successful project, obviously, for sure. We're going to employ 100 plus employees, 150 employees or more. And obviously, we hope to get going here pretty quickly. So I'm just going to kind of give you a quick update of where we are right at this point. You know, we've done a lot of the site, you know, looking at the elevations, the contours, making sure where things are going to fit on the site and those kinds of things. So we've got that pretty well laid out, and we're in the process of now buying equipment. We probably 50% of the equipment, and you know, obviously we've submitted in for our permits, you know, the EAWs, the construction permits, the PSD permits, and those kinds of things. So those are in queue, and hopefully we'll get, you know, some favorable responses around those kinds of things so we can actually get rolling. We plan to be on site sooner the better. We like to get the earthwork, some of the grubbing, those kinds of things done here this fall before winter comes. But if we can't, then obviously we'll have to wait till spring. And then hopefully at that time, we'll have our permits that we can go ahead and start putting foundations in the ground and start rising the equipment, the buildings, and those kinds of things. So then we hope to be in operations sometime here in 2024. If things go together well, we could maybe be there sooner, but that's kind of our plan. And we're going to stick to it at this point. As far as the species we're going to be using, obviously it's native stuff around here, or you know, with the aspen primarily, a little bit of maple and birch. We're gonna stick with its typical form that it is here with the loggers harvested 100-inch sticks and those kinds of things. We're gonna use about 1 million tons a year. And so it's gonna be one of our biggest sites. It's gonna be world-class in terms of production capabilities and efficiency. We expect it to be hopefully the most efficient in the world, but yet to be seen. Tim talked a little bit about some of our sorry about that. About some of our principles here, but EHS leads the front, health, safety, environmental sustainability, respect for people. You get to be a good company by listening to your folks and taking what they have to say and acting to it and implementing it, those kinds of things. Ethical behavior. You don't get to be recognized by some of these organizations as being an industry leader if you're not genuine and upfront and ethical in everything you do. And then excellence. Obviously we want to do it right the first time, not have to repeat our stuff. When we look at capital and how we deploy for project work and anything we do, we look at the people side of things. We look at the planet, how it's going to affect it, the sustainability, and then we also look at profitability. If you can't make some money doing the job, then it's you can't last forever, right? So. Oh, sorry, thank you. Okay, good. Just in time for my last slide. Thank you.
Any questions for us? Yes.
You talked about expanding into the western markets. Is your access to rail, is that part of the idea behind locating it here in Minnesota?
That was a big consideration for sure. And that's why the site that we chose there is very close to the main rail spur. And so certainly it's huge, not only from a raw material perspective, but also from incoming raw materials, but also our outbound materials. Because if you want to reach the Pacific Northwest, you got to ship it by rail, otherwise you just can't be competitive.
Are you going to get both BNSF and CN to potentially bid on your rail traffic, or do you anticipate that you'll just be completely locked by one?
Well, right now, I think we know that there's BNSF, and we haven't spoken to the other yet, but certainly, competition is always good, right?
Yeah.
So historically, that's a great question. Historically, we just kind of get locked in.
Yeah.
Because the volume, especially when you compare the volume that we talk versus, the other components that they're moving, it's not enough to get too many people involved in it. It's a great question. It's something that we would love to be able to have competition.
We're not going to be shipping, hundreds and hundreds of containers or wagon loads every day or anything like that. We're not going to be like MP where they take a bunch of coal. We'll be shipping. They can service us 3 days a week. We'll ship out. We'll have a pretty good sized switch there that we can handle quite a few cars, A-frames and center beams type of things. But we'll also have to see how the market plays out, the dynamics with that too.
Okay. So you'll use short haul semis and otherwise?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Flatbeds.
Mark's probably about 130 trucks a day, 100 to 130 flatbeds a day.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
Monday through Friday.
And we'll get lots of truckloads of wood coming in for sure. So. Great question. Yes, sir.
How's the permitting coming along
Well, that's a great question as well. And we've submitted our EAW, and the city of Cohasset has been very helpful, Max and his team and stuff like that. So I think we went through our public comments pretty much, and I think there's a hearing a little bit later. That seems to be going pretty good. We now have submitted for our construction permit now, 1,500 pages worth of documents and stuff like that. So it's been a lot of work.
that's always a Mickey, with navigable waters in Minnesota and things like that, that's always something that we gotta be mindful of, but, so far we've been able to, work with the right people and seem to have a pretty good priority on this, so we're hopeful that we'll get our permit here in, March, April of this next year, so that way we can go ahead and put some concrete in the ground and start lighting our equipment. We're planning, we're getting about a third of our main equipment out of Germany. We plan to use a port there in Duluth to get that and receive it, and it could be heavy big equipment and stuff like that, and the rest will be coming here from the States primarily. But so far, so good, but I've been through it before, so.
When do you expect to be hiring? You have a timeline of when you want to be producing? When will you need people feet on the ground?
It's a great question. So the question was, when do we plan to start hiring? And we're starting some of those conversations now. It will ramp up once we get a little further in the project, but the intent will be to have people on the ground well before we are in the process of making panels. We do have what we would classify as a world-class culture at Huber Engineers Woods. We want to make sure that whoever is going to be working at this facility experiences that at our other facilities. We've got lots of trade secrets, lots of best management practices in our facilities, as any world-class manufacturer does. We want to make sure we get that ingrained in them well before they're trying to run our equipment here.
We've hired, we're going to be managing the project ourselves. We're not going to have an EPC or anything like that. So we have our own engineering team. That's, we've had to pick up a few people on that, which we have. We're going to have consultants and contractors that are competent and stuff like that. But the heavy hiring will probably, we get, some of the key people, the HR, the plan manager, likely going to be maybe one or two internal guys. We have shown that the best success is if you take that culture that we have at other plants and bring it here, so that can be transferred, and then they go from there. But I suspect early next year we'll start bringing on some key people, and then obviously then we'll start trying to get people on stream quick enough so that they can be properly trained. Otherwise, you're gonna have trained folks and have a disaster or something like that. We're past our time.
You're doing great.
You're doing great. Any other questions or? No, Matt, Eric, you guys have been just really helpful for us. We do appreciate, the support behind the community here. We tried to put together a little report to talk a little bit about Huber. They're, we want to take it on the table there, but we look forward to being part of the community, and thank you for the time today. So.
Thank you so much, Mark and Tim. Thank you so much, Mark and Tim, for that presentation. We've been working with them for many months now, along with many in the room, and it is a super exciting project. And I'm really surprised that Mark didn't have that hiring question like shotgun ready, because I ask him like every time we talk and he gives me a hard time about it. So we're excited for the opportunities for our community. We are going to have a brief break as we separate the rooms, and we'll get into our final actual session of the day, and then we'll be going into our work session. So thanks for the ongoing push, lots of information, and we're looking forward to seeing you this afternoon in the next 10 minutes.